Bonnie, and on the podcast with you guys, was like, challenged you guys to say that you knew an election was coming. And you're basically like, yeah, everybody knew an election was coming, right? It was the worst kept secret at Queen's Park for a long time. The precise date, no, but that Ford was going to pull the trigger early, for sure. Everybody had been talking about for months and months.
Welcome back to Closer Look on this Thursday, the 11th day of September. If you left here last night after the show and went home and placed a bet on your Tigers, you would have made some serious bank.
Yeah, I can imagine what the odds would have been that the Tigers would win 2 in a row against the Yankees by exactly 10 runs.
God knows you would have been reminded 100 times during the broadcast.
I have to say, I had it on for a little while last night, and it came up multiple times, the odds of this guy getting a hit. And
I know.
It was a great conversation with Dr. Charlotte Bodgest, and we've had a lot of reaction from people talking about it on the comment section about how, it's not just the commercials. It's just the broadcasters are telling me this. It's all over the place, right? And it really is. It's an issue we talked about before we had her on, and I'm glad we were able to have that conversation.
Absolutely. Jays and Tigers will continue to play through the weekend. Another big event happening in Toronto this weekend is the annual general meeting that the Ontario Liberal Party will be holding.
I guess speaking of the odds, that we're now going to see the odds of Bonnie Crombie hanging on as Liberal Party leader. This is an issue that's been going on for a couple months. People have been talking about this upcoming meeting. It's a mandatory leadership review.
Right.
Lots of armchair quarterbacking about how the election went for the Liberal Party. There was criticisms over whether they ran on the right platforms. They really focused on healthcare as opposed to Trump and the economy as Ford did. There were concerns about whether the party missed the signals that Ford was going to call a snap election. Right. That's all part of it. So there's been some critics of Bonnie, led by Nate Erskine-Smith, who we had on the show as well over the summer, talking about how there was an absolute failure and it's time for a leadership change. And he was interesting because he pointed out the fact that, because there are people saying, well, you can't just throw the party into yet another leadership race. And he pointed to the example of Mark Carney saying that change came at the absolute perfect time. They would have the federal Liberals would have been wiped off the map essentially had Trudeau run. All the polls were showing that, and Carney kind of saved them from the dead.
Yeah,
and so that's his argument. So our team at the Trillium will be covering all the angles of the meeting over the weekend, including the breaking news when it happens on what happens with Bonnie. So we're going to talk today with two of those staffers, Jessica Smith-Cross, the editor-in-chief at the Trillium, and Steve Cornwell, one of our reporters there, who's going to be covering it. It's going to be an interesting chat.
Joined on the program tonight by Jessica Smith-Cross and Steve Cornwell, our crack reporting staff at the Trillium. Guys, good to see you as always. Welcome to the show.
Always good to see you, Scott.
Thanks for having us.
You're welcome, Steve. Good to see you. Big few days coming up for the Ontario Liberal Party and their leader, Bonnie Crombie. Jess, just to bring everyone up to speed, what's happening in Toronto this weekend?
It is the Ontario Liberal Party's annual general meeting. And at this one, there's going to be a leadership review for Bonnie Crombie, which means that delegates who are some Liberals chosen from around the province to go to this thing are going to vote on whether or not there should be a new leadership election, basically whether or not Bonnie Crombie gets to keep her job as leader.
Okay, lots of intrigue over what may or may not happen, and we'll get into all of that. But let's start with Bonnie Crombie, the person. Steve, for our viewers and listeners who aren't at Queen's Park every day like you are, what is she like?
Well, she's certainly an interesting person. I've known her for a few years at the very least because I used to cover Mississauga City Council a few years back when she was mayor. So I've interviewed her many times and chatted with her several times. And she strikes me as something like a type A personality, which I don't think it's not a negative. I think it's probably something that you probably have to have as a politician. But what I mean by that, she's very high energy. She's likes to be well rehearsed, and she likes to present kind of a polished and together appearance. And you guys interviewed her as well. I saw that, and she's famous for her kind of headlight beam smile that she wears kind of 85% of the time. And otherwise, at Queen's Park herself, she's been a fixture in scrums after question period. Excuse me, she's not directly participating in question period, as we know, or other legislative matters, because she didn't have her seats locked down in Mississauga, East Cooksville. And maybe a bit of foreshadowing. I think if she did win, I suspect the conversation we'd be having today might be a little bit different.
What's that been like for her? I know she talked about how she was going to be there every day, and yes, she wouldn't be able to participate in the legislature, but the doors would open and she'd be there to speak for the party. How's that gone for her, do you think?
I think she's been able to weigh in pretty consistently, I think, on media reporting. But there's always something a bit lacking if you don't have, from a party's standpoint, if you don't have your leader kind of challenging the premier, if that's the goal of your party, I would imagine. The NDP, by contrast, Merritt Stiles, she has plenty of tape footage of her kind of challenging the Ford government. That's something, at least at this stage, that Bonnie Crombie doesn't have. So it might be, it's, I would say, something that she, to improve the fortunes of the party, would probably have to get a handle on.
Jess, lots of armchair quarterbacking since the provincial election about what the Liberal Party did well and did wrong. Criticisms about their platform, criticisms about how they kind of failed to see that an early election was coming. The party recently released a debrief on all that. What did it have to say?
Yeah, the party does this when they lose an election. It's kind of interesting. They canvass their own members and get their feedback. I think that's important for internal party relations. So this was a summary of what the members had to say about why they lost and how they should be doing better in the future. So lots of the usual kind of stuff you see in these things, which I'll kind of skip over for some of the two more interesting findings. One was that the party chose to campaign almost exclusively on healthcare and even more concentrated on the lack of family doctors in Ontario. The party members ended up, for the most part, regretting this and felt like the party should have taken Ford on more directly on the economy, on Trump and tariffs, which is what he fought the campaign on. And just the ground of the campaign was fought on. He won that battle for what's it about. The other thing that sort of leapt out at me was there was very nicely written, but when you take away the nice words, pretty stinging criticism about Crombie. The line was that she wasn't accompanied by senior staff at all of her media events. And I'm going to read what they said. The leader had limited staff resources with her at tour stops, which affected her performance and confidence when speaking. Mm-hmm. And when you think leadership, when you think political leadership, that's really not what you want to hear. As a reporter who was at a lot of those campaign stops, I'm not entirely surprised to see it. There were some times where she did seem a little bit not at her best self when dealing with the media during the campaign.
Mm-hmm. Was this meant to be public, this debrief, or did you guys obtain it?
Yeah, it's meant to be public, and the past ones have been as well.
Mm-hmm. And what about the idea of that they didn't see the early snap election coming? This has been tons of discussion about this, right? There were columnists talking about it. It seemed to be a lot of whispers, and their answer is, well, we were really caught off guard until a couple of weeks before. Is that even possible, Jess?
That's a really good question. When Bonnie, and on the podcast with you guys, was challenged you guys to say that you knew an election was coming, and you're basically yeah, everybody knew an election was coming, right? It was the worst kept secret at Queen's Park for a long time. The precise date, no, but that Ford was going to pull the trigger early, for sure. Everybody had been talking about for months and months. That definitely put the Liberals in a hard position. It's hard to organize for something when you don't know exactly when it's coming. But her after the fact saying nobody really knew didn't sit well with anyone, really.
Yeah, and certainly if you and I knew, how did she not know? Jess, Village Media did some recent polling on Bonnie Crombie and all things Liberal. What were the big takeaways?
So there's some really interesting ones. So what I talked before with the campaign debrief was, should she have campaigned on healthcare or the economy? One of the reasons the party said that they had chosen healthcare was that she had tested well on it prior to the election. The polling that we did after the election found that she actually didn't lead on that issue either. Voters didn't see her as the best leader on the economy, and they didn't see her on the best leader for healthcare either, which did put the party in a tough spot in making that. The poll also did show, though, that people generally, whether they're identified as Liberals or supporters of another party or even potential Liberal voters, don't see replacing Bonnie Crombie as the silver bullet here. Nobody thought that they would vote for the party more without her. Nobody saw a leader in the wings. We tested various names of people who might run should there be a race, and there was no runaway winner. And no one was convinced that replacing the leader is what the party needs. The opinions on all of those things were quite split.
Steve, we've heard lots of talk lately about the so-called New Leaf Liberals. Who are they, and what do they want?
Well, they describe themselves as a grassroots group of liberals aiming to strengthen the party and challenge, if not defeat, Doug Ford's government in the next election. And I think, as we've maybe alluded to here, they're characterizing the February election result as a crushing defeat, and they're campaigning to have Bonnie Crombie step down effectively. The group has a petition where they're calling her to step aside if she doesn't reach 66% support from Liberal members on Sunday. But I think members of the group have been more explicitly calling for a new party leader at different times. In terms of the people themselves, Nathaniel Arfin is one kind of co-founder and has been a pretty avid spokesperson for the group in the media. He ran municipally as a student trustee in Burlington, I believe. He's also had a federal staff role with the Liberal Party there, and I believe there's a connection as well to Nathaniel Erskine Smith, who of course was one of the challengers of Bonnie in the last Ontario Liberal leadership race.
Let's talk about those percentages for a minute, Steve. So I believe according to the party constitution, she has to receive 50% plus 1%, 50 plus 1% of the votes in order to stay on. But these New Leaf Liberals are saying it should at least be 2/3, or she should resign. Has she spoken at all since? I know we talked about it on the podcast. Has she spoken about this since? What's the number that she's willing to take? Do you think?
I don't know that she's said a specific number. Where I think she's left it open in terms of what her next steps would be if it wasn't a flattering result. But yeah, you're right, 100% in terms of you just need 50% plus one to succeed and remain, or I guess to pass the leadership review. But that would be a pretty low and potentially very detrimental result. The 66% number is kind of it harkens back to a Canadian political tradition, if you will. It refers to Joe Clark, former Prime Minister, his leadership campaign for the federal Progressive Conservative Party. He stepped down after receiving 66% support, and it launched a leadership contest, which Brian Mulroney ended up winning following that. But the 66% mark is kind of the watermark for support. It's become kind of in Canadian politics.
All right, let's get to the weekend. Jess, you and Steve will be at the AGM this weekend when the results are announced. What can you tell us about how it's all going to go down?
Well, I can tell you that the delegates will come in and they'll vote. So the votes will be coming in on the days leading up to Sunday, and on Sunday is when the votes will be announced in the middle of the day, and then we'll know from. And Bonnie Crombie does plan to speak to the media after that. So if we do get one of those results that Steve was just talking about, where she technically survives the review, but it's seen as low, you can bet that scrum's going to be important, where we find out what she has to say and what she's going to do. Or if she blows it out of the park, she'll probably want to celebrate with some happy comments to the media to make sure everybody knows it.
Yeah, this is probably a good time to remind people that we can follow all the coverage closely on the Trillium over the weekend and across our chain, all our local news sites. Jess and Steve their stories will appear there. Jess, you and the team have covered this, all the different angles about this. You've spoken to lots of Liberal sources. What's the feeling among the party about her chances of hanging on?
Everybody's got a different opinion, but if I was going to find the consensus among the people we were able to speak with, I think most people think that she will get over half of the votes. Whether it is enough to satisfy the party members and what exactly the number is up for a debate among Liberals. There's a little bit of trepidation about what happens then, because that result could be a recipe for more conflict within the party. And in politics, conflict within your party can generally be the worst kind. Mm-hmm. And so they have lots of things to say, and I'm sure there'll be lots of that kind of talk going on throughout the weekend.
Jess, I understand these sources also had some opinions of some of the other political rivals. What did they have to say about Nate Erskine Smith?
That actually surprised me a little bit. So Nate Erskine Smith came second to Bonnie in the last leadership race. He had some people in the party who supported him strongly. He didn't fare badly. It was a pretty close race. Since then, he has come out sort of strongly against Crombie, publicly criticizing how she has led the party. He has called on her to get that 2/3 support, at least, if not step down. And what the Liberals, almost all of them, said to me was, this has actually helped Bonnie, which is a little bit counterintuitive. But the way they explained it was that people who may have been a bit ambivalent or on the fence about Bonnie Crombie don't feel that way about Nate Erskine-Smith right now and what he has said. And if anything, for some of them, it's pushed them, at least some people, to Bonnie Crombie's camp to support her to stay the leader when they may not have otherwise. Now, I don't think everybody believes that, though we were told that quite a lot. And I actually asked Nate Erskine-Smith about this, because this is what you do. You ask people to weigh in on things people say about them, and he doesn't believe it. What he said is the leadership vote, the review vote, is not about me. It's about her. Did she do a good enough job? Is she the person who should win the next election? If so, keep her. If not, we'll have a new race. It's not going to be just me against her. Other people will run in that race. He wants to see a race because he wants to see what he considers to be the best leader win. He says whether that's him or not.
Yeah, that's the question we don't seem to get an answer to. That's great. It's fascinating, Jess. I want to ask you both. I'll start with Steve. I guess the thing that sticks out to me about all this, we're talking about Bonnie Crombie and to a certain extent what the NDP is doing as well. But it all comes at a time where it still feels like Doug Ford is just super unstoppable right now. I think the latest polls show he's even more popular now than when he won the election. I think that's what I read the other day. Do you get the sense, Steve, from talking to people in the different parties, that this is something that they could catch Doug Ford in some time in the foreseeable future?
Well, it's certainly the goal. There's no question about that. And I think that some of the math and the calculation that other parties are doing is just, I think people are hopeful that this phase of Canadian-U.S. relations, which seems to have benefited Doug Ford dramatically, will soon pass. The Captain Canada phase of the Premier's leadership will pass. And that may give other political parties a chance to kind of start to control the debate a little bit more than we've seen in the last few years. But, it's as it stands now, it seems like it's tough to get Doug Ford kind of off the TV, both in Canada and in Ontario and in the United States. And with that, obviously, the attention he's getting, it's not helpful for parties that are trying to gain ground on his government.
Mm-hmm. Jess, what do you think?
I think Steve nailed it. As long as the Captain Canada phase goes as it has been, it seems to be playing right to his strengths. We hear from regular voters who say, I wasn't sure about him before, but I really liked what he's had to say about Trump. That's a comment I've heard from multiple people. So when you think about Doug Ford, if you're thinking Captain Canada, you're more inclined to like him. If you think about the opposition parties would love to have Greenbelt era Doug Ford come back, Dean French era, chaotic, controversial stuff be what people are focusing on, but it's hard. Nobody focuses on that with stuff when your economic livelihood's at stake, and he's nailing it there.
Okay, guys, before we let you go, anything that we didn't cover about this topic or any other that you want to have the floor for before we let you go?
Great conversation. Glad we had it.
Maybe just one aside on Doug Ford's popularity. I was at the press conference where he poured out the bottle of Crown Royal, and my mom phoned me unsolicited, said, "Did you see him do that? Wow." And I thought, I was there. Yes, I did see that, Mom. So she's not a fan in my mom who's on the West Coast. So there's a little anecdote in terms of his popularity.
Yeah, I think you need to keep your mom more in the loop of what you're doing on a daily basis, where you're going to be, so she knows.
Yeah, I will. I'll work on that. Thank you.
All right. Good stuff. From Toronto tonight, there's Steve Cornwell and Jessica Smith-Cross, our editor at The Trillium. Guys, good to see you. Thanks for doing this. Have fun this weekend.
Thanks, Scott. Take care. Bye, Frisco.
I could sit and talk to those two all. I love talking politics, and nobody better to talk to about than Jess and Steve, for sure.
Have we not said it enough? We have the best team of political reporters in the province at Queen's Park. The Trillium team is phenomenal. They're all super intelligent, very plugged in, and they break stories by the day over there. It's phenomenal. So if you haven't checked out the Trillium, please do, trillium.ca. The great thing is a lot of their reporting also runs across our chain of local news sites all around Ontario. It's really been a huge boost for the journalism we do. here. And then when moments like this, when there's a big event happening, it's great to hear they put a lot of context onto what's happening. So it's been great.
Okay, let's do something a little different as we wrap up tonight. Obviously, two of the main players in this whole event that's happening this weekend, Bonnie Crombie and Nate Erskine-Smith. We had the pleasure of speaking with both of them in the last several weeks, so we thought we'd run some clips.
Yeah, we were fortunate to have them both on the program at different times over the summer. When I look back at the summer shows we had a lot of great guests over the summer. Yeah. So I was watching those programs last night, those episodes last night, just reminding myself of the stuff that they had to say. So we've cut a snippet from each interview just to remind people that we had them on the show, and you can also go back and watch the full episodes. But what they had to say over the summer is extremely relevant today, heading into the weekend's meeting. So we'll start with Nate Erskine-Smith, some things he had to say. We'll go to Bonnie Crombie after that.
Okay, so let's start with what everyone's talking about. Nate, last Friday you wrote an email blast calling for change within the leadership of the Ontario Liberal Party. Simply put, you're extremely critical of Bonnie Crombie and believe that unless she receives the minimum of 2/3 support at the annual general meeting, which is coming up in September, that she should resign. Why did you do that?
For a few different reasons. I mean, one, I was frustrated that the team was trying to socialize 51% of delegated members voting in support of continued leadership as some acceptable number. I mean, the convention in Canadian politics, for as long as I've followed, is a minimum of 66%. And I don't think we should move away from that. I mean, if you can't earn 66% support from your own members, good luck in a general election. And so when I saw that happening, and let's be honest, it's a delegated convention. So if you live outside of Toronto, if you live in Northern Ontario, if you live in rural Ontario, the cost is prohibitive. It's $375 for an adult who isn't low income. It's thankfully a little cheaper for a student, but it's prohibitive on the cost side. It's prohibitive for anyone who wants to travel and get a hotel or stay in Toronto for the night. And it excludes too many people. And so that, combined with the fact that they were moving to 51% as some threshold, I just wanted to call to say, one, participate. However you vote, whatever you think, maybe you disagree with me. Maybe you think there isn't change required. Participate in this process, get involved, and make your voice heard. So that was point number one. Two, look, on the question of change, I participated in a leadership race where many of us were calling for engaging in every corner of this province, and then that didn't happen in the course of Crombie's tenure. They were unprepared for the general election. Yes, there were modest improvements, a 6% bump in the overall numbers. But look, we got official party status, but we're still in third place. We were promised to go from third to first in that leadership race, and we've fallen short. And so my view, and this isn't about me. I want a competitive race. I want a number of people to put their name forward in a really competitive race and grow this party and be ready to win.
Is this the right time for another leadership race already?
Yeah, completely. Of course. I mean, we saw at the federal level the importance of changing leaders in a particular moment. And I don't, anyone looking at the last provincial campaign honestly would say we didn't do as well as we could and should have. And more to the point, we put winning in the leadership race ahead of ideas and grassroots rebuilding. We're basically back to square one. We have not done the work that we could and should have done post that leadership race in December 2023. So yeah, I think we need a new leader who's going to energize people, motivate people, inspire people to get involved in our politics, to articulate a case, a set of ideas and values that's going to inspire people to get involved in our politics, and to really prosecute a case for change, and to do the hard work of traveling to Northern Ontario and rural Ontario and all across this province and every corner of this province to rebuild the core volunteer and engagement and grassroots engagement of our Ontario Liberal Party. And a leadership does that. I just want to be clear about that. I've heard talk, it's going to be expensive. Oh, not now. This isn't the time. At the end of the day, the Ontario Liberal Party was more engaged in 2023 with Ontarians in a leadership race than it has been at any point since. I think we're going to attract talent, we're going to attract donations, we're going to attract engagement and public attention, and that's what we want. We want to rebuild this party in a serious way.
Are you one of those talents, Nate? Will you run if she's no longer the leader after the September convention?
I mean, maybe. I've written that in my post to say, honestly, of course I have an interest. I hope there are others too. I know there's some people who have said, this is Nate versus Bonnie 2.0. Far from it. Like I've spoken to others and encouraged others to participate. I think there's lots of talent in this party. I can think of folks at Queen's Park right now. Karen McCrimmon is an excellent voice, and that caucus is still small, but there are really strong members in that caucus. Ted Hsu ran in the last time; he'd be excellent if he ran again. You've got others at the federal scene. I'm gonna annoy Karina Gould every chance I get to encourage her to run. There are folks who have been in politics previously who would be great. I just think we will have a very competitive race, more competitive than last time, and maybe I throw my hat in the ring. I have an interest, obviously. That's a question for family principally, but as I said in the post, it's also about team, right? Like if I'm going to do this again, if I do it again, I would have to look around the room and see 20 people who want to be candidates with me, who want to build this with me, and who want to win together, but also govern together in a serious way. And so, I'm going to let the members make their decision before I make mine. And the members have a really important decision in front of them. Do they think that the status quo is good enough? I've weighed in to say I don't think so, but it's up to the members to decide.
Nate, a lot of Liberal MPs have come to Crombie's defense since your email. One said he's, quote, tired of this crap from yourself and other so-called insurgents. Another took a veiled shot at you saying, our cause is a collective one, not of personal ambition. How do you respond to those?
I think I responded to this in posts if folks cared to read it. When I said at the end of the day, being a team player is caring about what is best for the team in the long run. And I don't think the status quo is good enough for the team. I think we have seen that. And so, look, are you on Team Crombie or are you on Team Ontario Liberal Party and Team Ontario, wanting what's best for our party and what's best for our province? I don't think our best foot forward is the current leadership. I think they've shown that. They had a shot. They did the opposite of what they said they were going to do in many respects. The fact that it's a delegated convention and excludes grassroots participation all across this province speaks volumes. The fact that across 2024, we did not see the leader engage Ontarians in a serious way. We didn't see any visibility. We didn't see a real prosecution of the case or preparation for what everyone knew was going to be an early election. So, look, I lived through federally a situation where we saw a leadership change recently, and that leadership change and that leadership race was very, very good for our party. I think we should learn some lessons from that, and we should say what is best for our party in this given moment. It's change at the top, and it's real renewal.
Nate, have you talked to Bonnie personally?
I have exchanged messages over the months and the years since the leadership race. And I want to be clear about this too. Like I have offered my help. I offered my help right out of the gate. So we had coffee after the leadership race in December 2023. And I said, I will help in any way. My team will help in any way. How can we help? And the response was, well, great, maybe you can help engage young liberals. And there was a dismissiveness there that, when the convention came around, the last convention, they chose to platform Christy Clark instead of team building with Yasser, myself, and other leadership candidates. I think that's the wrong way to go about building a team. So after the next leadership race, if we have one, whoever the next leader happens to be, they've got to pull everyone together and pull all of the teams together to make sure we're marching together in the right direction for this province. But yeah, I mean, this isn't a personal thing. I have nothing. I have no ill will. I have no personal grievance, no axe to grind as far as it goes. I want what's best for the party. And I think if a lot of liberals reflect on the federal scene and the provincial scene today, and they think, if I want what's best for the party, do I think this current leadership is going to drive that change home that I really want to see at Queen's Park? It's the same question we faced back in December, January, February for our federal party. Mm-hmm. And I think as liberals, we've got to reflect on that. Is it a question of loyalty to dear leader, or are we going to do what's best for our party?
Mm-hmm. Is it frustrating to hear some people remark that you vanished essentially during the provincial election campaign, that you weren't around to help? Because you're saying another side of that story.
Well, it's not, sure. I mean, there's a little bit of frustration, but that's not really the story. Look, if anyone was paying attention, they would have seen that not only did I bring my whole team to help Mary Margaret McMahon, I offered help. That help was accepted. Not only did I do a fundraiser for Mary Margaret, we thumped in Beaches East York. Mary Margaret won handily because of her own efforts, because she's an incredible advocate here locally, but also because we worked really well as a team. Mm-hmm. And it's unfortunate that didn't happen at a broader level, but at the end of the day, you can only offer your help. It's got to be accepted. And and my goal in all of this is to make sure that everyone is engaged. And do I want personal attacks? Not particularly. Do I want this to be about me? Not at all. This is about what is best for the party and what direction we want for the party. And look, if people want Crombie to stay, great. They should make that case. And what I haven't heard a defense of, which is very, very telling, no one has articulated the case for 50% plus one. And anyone who's defending the status quo should really make that case, because that is unheard of in Canadian politics.
We do want to move on to some other questions. I appreciate this. But just to be clear, you have not decided whether you would run for the party leadership should Bonnie Crombie not get the support of the party.
No, I think I was honest about that in the post, that I have an interest, but it's not a decision I'm going to take until the members have made theirs. And there are lots of factors to consider. And so I think there ought to be change. I want a very competitive race. And this really is not about me.
All right, let's shift gears, Bonnie, and talk about next month. The Liberal Party will be hosting its annual general meeting in Toronto. We mentioned the dates off the top, September the 12th, it kicks off. It will include a mandatory review of your leadership. Now, according to party constitution, you must receive the support of more than 50% of delegates to stay on. The question, Bonnie, why should members continue to put their faith in you?
That's a great question. And of course, I'm going to earn their trust, as I do each and every day. When I came to be leader of the Ontario Liberal Party, I want to make it very clear, I didn't do this for personal gain. I hadn't been demoted out of my caucus from cabinet or anything. I left a fantastic job as the mayor of the greatest city in Canada, of Mississauga, and I enjoyed every day my role. However, I thought there was a need for someone of my skill set, the business background that I bring, the fact that I have governing experience and have run a government quite competently, that I'm compassionate yet business oriented. So I thought there was a role for me at the provincial level, won the leadership race. And I did so because I care deeply about this party and I care deeply about people. I'm not hungry for power. I'm hungry about doing the right thing for people. And I'm here to rebuild this party. We have had 9 regional meetings across the province, plus a provincial executive council with all the riding presidents. And we've listened to the constructive input that they have made on what went wrong with the campaign. And you and I can go over some of those other things, that what we did right, what we did wrong, and what we plan to change. And I am committed to revitalization of our party and bringing forward, because we have a path forward, the kinds of changes that I've heard that people are asking for. So things like earlier nominations. There are the small towns and rural areas, there are smaller ridings up north, and even some of the urban ridings where candidates want to get a head start and start knocking on doors, and they want an early nomination. And we're going to open up early nominations as of January. We heard, we listened. Our northern and rural ridings need more support. Well, that's great, because now, because of Liberal Caucus Services Bureau, we have an outreach team and an outreach desk, and we're mentoring our unheld ridings, and each of our MPPs, in fact, has a mentoring role with 4 or 5 ridings. We're going to put an emphasis on rebuilding PLAs, and the outreach teams will help us do that. We'll be leveraging our MPPs, the outreach team, people on the ground in every community across the province, and our federal counterparts. Where they have held ridings, we're going to try to leverage some of them. Our people love to get together and talk policy. I've got to tell you, we had a thinkers conference last year, and it just wasn't enough. They want to get on the floor of a plenary, and they want to hash out motions and resolutions and have discussion, and we're going to deliver that for them next year, because we haven't had one in 7 years. If you don't count the one we did last year, was more of a thinkers conference. We also have to review our vendors. The data collection was inadequate. Our digital capacity was inadequate, but now that we have the resources, we're able to do that. So we are going to be getting election ready, and we're starting to get election ready for the next election, whether it's in 2.5 years, 3 years, or 4 years. Right now, we're taking it back to the grassroots. I'm here to say we have listened, we acknowledge mistakes were made, and we are prepared to rebuild and revitalize and move forward together, because we are strongest when we act together. We need to be united against our common opponent, not against each other.
On that vein, there are some in the party who've been vocal about they don't believe that the 50% plus one is enough for you to stay on, that you should resign if you don't receive at least 2/3 support. What do you say to those people, Bonnie?
Well, again, they don't set the threshold. The Constitution does. And ultimately, the leader decides. But I'm not here about a specific number. I'm here about regaining trust from the party. We let them down. They wanted to win. I wanted to win. And we are going to win if we work together. We have to be united, not divided. We have one common enemy. And if we're not fighting each other, we're fighting our common opponent, and that is Doug Ford and the Conservative government. And we are strongest when we work together.
So what? Just want to make sure, what's the right threshold for you? Is there a number? Is 50 plus 1% enough?
We're not going to get into specifics. We're here to build back trust with voters and deliver the kinds of changes that they've been asking for. And we're already on it. We are already on top of it. We're writing a report about, the previous campaign, what went wrong. Like, we had a lot of successes. We did get 30% of the vote versus 18.5% for the NDP. That's pretty significant. Their vote is what's called more efficient. It translated to more seats. We won more broadly, but listen, we lost by some very narrow margins in a lot of places, by 20 votes in Erin Mills, by 39 votes in Burlington, by 140 in Eglinton Lawrence, and in York Southwest and the same, by about 150. We came a very strong second in 77 ridings. And we increased our popular support in 102 of the 124 ridings. So that is great. And the resources that we have gained through fundraising and through our vote count, the 33%, has allowed us to build Liberal Service Caucus Bureau. And I think the difference today is that people see me more often. I was spending more time on tour, traveling across the province, getting to know the small towns and having people in smaller areas come to know me and our vision for the party. But now when the legislature sits, they're going to see me at Queen's Park. So we have a strategy meeting in the morning when we talk about question period and allocate the questions and the themes. Unfortunately, John Fraser is asking my questions. But when we come out of question period and the doors open, it's me. It's me responding to the press. So you get to see me on the 6 o'clock, 12 p.m. or 6 p.m. news. And people are saying, geez, we're seeing you around a little more. So I'm now committed to continue to do the traveling, but not when the House is in session. And then you're going to ask me about a seat. Let me say that.
We were going to ask you that. So go ahead. Yeah.
Did you get a copy of these?
We didn't send you any questions in advance. We didn't send you.
So Mississauga was very humbling to lose Mississauga. I got to say, I didn't see that coming. We were fighting that big blue machine, and apparently the city of Brampton was released to help the mayor's mother-in-law. So that one hurt. It still does. I won't deny that. In the polling we did, this was going to be a good riding. I was not 100% sure myself, but we all won the advance polls in Mississauga. So all 6 ridings were well ahead after the advance poll. We knew we do the advance last, so we can calculate whether we're ahead or behind then, and we were ahead. So whatever happened, the changes in Mississauga came towards the end when a lot of resources came into the riding, people resources from the city of Brampton. When you looked around, there was every billboard and every bus shelter had been purchased. There was a marked tone and difference, and the premier was spending a lot of time there as well. So I think we got outgunned by that big blue machine. That'll never happen again. Now, I will say that there's a natural attrition of about 2 seats a year. Plus, there are a number of MPPs who had made it public that they didn't intend to run again. And yet, because of the snap call, they were told that their name was going back on the ballot. So we think there will be some good opportunities to get a seat very, very soon. And I mean a viable seat.
Yes, in a by-election. In a by-election, you mean?
In a by-election,
yeah.
That's correct. I'm not asking anyone to step down unlike the federal Conservative Party. Every single member is an integral part of the team, has worked hard to get there and deserves to be there. So I'm not asking anyone to step down, but I know that there will be opportunities for a viable seat.
Okay, Bonnie, I know you don't want to talk specific numbers where the leadership mandate is concerned, but one guy who does, and you know where I'm going with this, is Nate Erskine-Smith. He's hung up on the 66% cut line. Nate was on our show last week, very critical of your leadership, saying, and I'm quoting here, "We need a new leader who's going to energize people, motivate people, and inspire people to get involved in our politics." How do you respond to him?
Well, yeah, I'm not really going to respond to him. He has his views and I have mine. I mean, the only thing I will say is he should pick a lane. You know, he was an MP, ran for leader, announced he wasn't going to run again, then was offered a position and ran again. And if he really wanted to make a difference in this party, he would have run in February, not as a provincial Liberal, not as a federal Liberal, didn't gain his seat, didn't gain his cabinet position back. And so now he's running for leader again. So this is a man who's really not a team player, not of a federal team, not of the provincial team. And I don't think he's decided what kind of contribution he wants to make. So when you look at the fundraising I've done and the travels across this province are unsurpassed. You know, I have raised under the new rules the kind of money they used to raise back when the days we had corporate donations. If you need to compare our fundraising ability, take a look at our leadership. I raised $2.5 million to his $500,000. So there's no comparison. I guess he's just looking for a new job, and good for him. But I'm not in this for personal gain. As I said, I left. I resigned from an amazing job that I loved because I put this party first. And I will continue to put the people of the Ontario Liberal Party and Ontario Liberals, but Ontarians first. I have no other agenda other than build back this party, serve Ontarians, and form the next government. Those are my goals. I'm very transparent. I work very hard each and every day. Our days are long, and I'm very committed. I'm not going anywhere.
All right, that's it for us tonight on Closer Look. Coming up tomorrow, we've been talking about this one for several days, and we're looking forward to it. The U.S. Ambassador to Canada, Pete Hoekstra, will join us tomorrow night. For Michael Friscolanti, our editor-in-chief here at Village Media, I'm Scott Sexsmith. Thanks for watching. Enjoy what's left of your Thursday. We'll see you tomorrow night at 7, right here on Closer Look.
Frisco and Scott's Wardrobe provided in part by Moores, Sault Ste. Marie.